and welcome to another episode of the Wadhwani Viewpoint podcast. My name is Manali Shah, and today's conversation is going to be all about startups. Joining us is Shivjeet Ghatge, the co founder and CEO of the hugely successful app StepSetGo. And when I say hugely successful, I mean it. The AI enabled fitness app has seen over 10 million downloads across India. The app features a unique rewards based system that motivates the users to continue working towards their fitness goals. So, Shivjeet, welcome to the show and thank you so much for taking the time out to be here. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and StepSetGo?
Yeah, I'm Shivjeet Ghatge. I am the co-founder and CEO of StepSetGo, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I hear about everything that you've been doing, and you've been helping startups at least connect with different people and giving them context to how to go about their startup journey. And I think if I had known about this when I was starting up, like at least like when in 2017, 2018, it would have been priceless for me, right? Because you learn the most from other people's mistakes, and if they're coming forward and telling you what to focus on, what not to focus on, and it's not just book knowledge, it helps quite a bit because usually you need to understand your market. And yeah, so the best information you get is from other founders that have actually gone through the journey, right? So absolutely love being here. And let me give you a little bit of a context about what StepSetGo is. StepSetGo is a fitness application that rewards you for your movement essentially. So how StepSetGo works, I'm just going to go to the basics so everybody understands what we're talking about, and then we can talk about what happened, why it happened, and everything else, right? So StepSetGo was created purely on the concept of not enough people actually track their exercise every day. So it could be a walk, it could be a run, whatever it is. People don't have an idea of how much they've done. And because they don't have that idea, they feel like they can't take on a fitness journey because it's too daunting or too much for them to actually take on today. They know they want to be healthy. The point is there's no danger to your health if you don't go for a walk today, right? It's just going to compound over time, and it's something, the fear is very far for you. So you don't inculcate that habit starting now, but if you just start recording what you're doing, it's easier to just kind of build on it, right? So that was the whole concept of StepSetGo when we started. StepSetGo works in a way where you download the StepSetGo application, you start walking. For every step that you take, you'll get these things called StepSetGo coins. And these coins you can use from a plethora of different things, from discount codes on brands that you love. It could be any brands like a Bewakoof, Puma, whatever that might be. Or you can even get free products from a plethora of different brands for exchanging this, right? A currency for that. So that is essentially the hook of getting people in, right? But we put a very, very high focus on the social construct of how people interact with each other and the gamification side. So I have a personal journey that I want to go over and get different things, as well as I have public journeys which I can compete with, right? So socialization and gamification is very important. We try to take it one step at a time. The overall concept is to make fitness simple, fun, and rewarding, right? And that is what we are trying to do. That's a short intro.
Absolutely, that's incredible. Being rewarded for just doing what you need to do anyway is amazing. So yes, let's talk about how the things came about. I believe that when you were brainstorming with your co-founders, there were a bunch of ideas that went from the drawing board to fully functional business models. I want to talk to you about the process. How did you go about evaluating each idea? How scientific and rigorous was that process?
So let me tackle this question in two parts. First, I'll tackle the question about what were the ideas prior to StepSetGo and why we didn't necessarily dive into them full time, right? It's important to understand the co-founders, the working co-founders of StepSetGo, to understand the story. So Misal is my childhood friend, right? We went to the same boarding school, right? And he's basically the full stack developer, and right now at StepSetGo he handles product and design, right? Abhay Pai is the third co-founder, including me, and he took his first job with Misal. So both of them used to work together and know how they work, and they work best together. Both of them are tech powerhouses, right? So now that context is out of the way. So Misal and me, after we finished our studies, and I had about 7 to 8 years of advertising experience back then, and Misal obviously had worked in tech for multiple different companies, and we started brainstorming on providing a solution for a problem from an app-based solution, right? So we had 2 or 3 different concepts. One concept went into actually almost launching, and that concept was a full-time solution for pets, from where to get your pets to doctor's appointments, to getting walkers, to getting buying things for it, a one-stop solution for anything to do with pet owners. And this kind of infringes into the second half of the question of what all do you do before you actually jump in, right? Because you need to quit the job that is paying you a sufficient salary to take this on. One thing that I suggest to founders to not do is have one foot in both, right? And that is the mistake that even I had started doing, and a lot of people do, because then you don't have, because in case you're getting into something, do it properly, right? But obviously do your research before this. And that's why that app didn't work, because we actually started researching and we found a lot of different apps providing similar solutions. And we got a financial advisor, we created the full business plan, everything was done, and we were just trying to figure out, now should we take the plunge, quit our job and start working on this or no? And while we were doing research of this marketplace, right, at least in India, we found an app in Italy called Dog Wow, and that was essentially doing everything we had thought of and more, and it had 50,000 downloads, and that's it. Right? And it had existed for 5 years or 4 years at that point. And then we realized that maybe we are missing something, right? Somebody has built everything that we want to build and more, and they've thought of solutions that are beyond what we thought we would get 2-3 years down the line. And even then they don't have the traction in a much more developed pet market, right? And that is why we started having reservations and started thinking about something else. StepSetGo's idea actually came from Abhay, who is the third co-founder. And interestingly enough, when Misal and me were working on this pet concept, Abhay was working on a very similar pet concept with somebody else. And this happened by chance, right? And we were sitting and discussing those pet concepts over a drink. And that's when Abhay said a very interesting thing. He had just put on a little weight at that point of time. And he basically turned around and told us, and we were poking fun at him, obviously, for putting on that little weight. And he basically turned around and said, I will not go to the gym unless that gym pays me, right? And that is what started the concept of StepSetGo, right? Saying that how do we get people, because fitness is just looked at as something that's boring, right? And for StepSetGo, again, we went through the same process. Now we had 2 tech powerhouses, so we knew we could build the app from the ground up, right? We had to just sit, dig a hole, all 3 of us sit, brainstorm of what the concept is going to be and take it forward, right? And essentially, we wanted to solve problems that were already in the market. Problems related to lack of motivation after you start, because you start working out, you want, so what happens is I will get up on the 1st of Jan and say, I want a 6-pack today, right? Yeah. So you will take a gym membership, you will get a trainer, you'll buy new clothes, you'll buy new shoes, you'll spend everything you have to, and you'll start with a new diet plan, new nutrition plan, everything. 7 days later, it's all gone because motivation is over, right? You'll start again next year. I have full clarity that I will, but full motivation is gone. And we wanted to stop that cycle, right? And we wanted to start off with the most basic. We did a lot of market research. I'm not going inside that specifically to not make this too long, right? But we found out, basically, we had a large market that we had to play with. The point was that we have 45 million users that are core fitness who've tried this. They've downloaded an app, they go for a walk, they play tennis, whatever that might be. But we have 350 million users that are not even doing that, but are health conscious. So we wanted them to start their fitness journey by just counting their steps, right? And then upgrade them to more complex workout regimes, right? And what we also knew is once they start taking on an app and they start this journey, it's fitness, it's boring, they're going to drop off. We wanted them to come back into the same ecosystem. That is where the coins came into play, right? And StepSetGo's vision at that point was to make sure that at any given point of time, no matter what fitness activity you want to do, StepSetGo will facilitate it. So if you want to go to the gym, I'll give you the best discount at the gym, go to the gym. We'll authenticate that you've gone there and give you coins for that. Suddenly now I can compete with a guy who's walking while I'm swimming, right? So we wanted to do that. We wanted to make a barrierless fitness ecosystem so we can gamify and socialize extensively. And even if you fall off the system, you can come back because the coins are waiting for you. So you can come back, we have more solutions for you. So that is essentially what the plan was. And obviously we went through a large number of business models. At least we created 3 fully functioning ones before we actually started, because all 3 of us had to quit our job and start doing this, right? Which we did, and we had the app up and running in 6 months after we quit our jobs, essentially.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about business models. What are the key essentials that go into a successful business model?
Okay, so for us, right, I don't believe this is, I think this is sound advice for most people to go with. For us, what was very, very important from the beginning is the business needs to be a business. It needs to make revenue, right? It needs to have a user base that is interested in it, and we need to be solving a solution that is solving a problem that is inherent in the market. Our problem was people weren't, usually what happens is somebody solving that, you solve it in a better manner, right? The case with us was this problem wasn't being solved. How do you get users to at least start tracking with the temptation of doing that, while also getting them back into the same ecosystem after they drop off, right? So a sound is, for me, keep very clear these things of, you need to know when you're breaking even, when the money is going to start flowing in, when the business is going to be profitable. It needs to be it can't be, I will get a lot of users and then I'll figure profitability. It cannot be that, right? Your business model needs money, and it needs to make money fast, right? It's obviously depends on industry to industry, but we are very clear about that is how business should work, because that's how you make sustainable businesses. You cannot make businesses on the thing of, I will keep raising money to keep trying to blow this and then I'll figure how I use this data. One misconception that I've seen amongst most people generally is that I'm collecting a lot of data, and because I have data, I obviously can monetize this at some point in time. Just having a lot of data doesn't mean you have a way to monetize that data, right? So don't focus on that. Focus on your monetization model, right? And make sure that there are enough people that want it. So it needs to be based on a lot of market research, and it needs to be sound when it comes to, will it make money? Because at the end of the day, you have to pay the team. I'm not saying you make money, become a billionaire, right? You should think about your exit. You should think about all that. It's very important. But at the end of the day, make sure it's sustainable, right?
Right, absolutely. And you mentioned market research. So how important would you say is research and data mining before starting up? And how did you go about it? Let's talk about that as well.
Okay, so to be very honest, it took us 6 months to build the application. Once we started building it, it took us 1 year to actually get to the building stage, right? So it took us half the time to actually put our thoughts into action and have a ready product. And it took us 1 year of trying to build conviction to that idea, right? So that is how much market research is more important than actually building it. Because the more market research you do, the more you understand what you're trying to build, the more people you talk to, right? That will define what you build, right? So it's imperative. If you don't have that and you're starting on a gut feeling, you've gone wrong before you started also, right? Because you can't think that, I think the market needs this. You need to go talk to them, right? One more key thing that I need to tell every college student who's planning to start his own business is, don't be shy to talk about your idea. Because usually I've heard this happen multiple times, and even I went through this, where I have a great idea. In my head, I think it's a great idea, right? If you don't bounce it off people, you don't know the holes in that idea, right? And you don't bounce it off people because you think, oh, it's my idea, it's so unique. If I tell you, he will build it or she will build it before me. That is the worst mistake you can do, because your idea can be crap. I'm sorry for the use of that word, but you need a sounding board. That's what investors do when they come onto your business, right? That's what as a startup, all startups need to think of creating you need to have a sounding board for all your ideas to be vetted, and that is most essential when you start off, right? So talk about your idea, talk about it passionately. Just understand that most people who are already in the business have already thought about what you're thinking. It's not an idea that you have that is completely. The only way to mature that idea into something that people haven't built is by talking to more people. Most people in larger businesses don't have the bandwidth to build an entire new product. They will wait for you to build it and take over your product. It's good. Use their experience, right? That is research. Talk to everybody.
Correct. And did you rely on any reports for estimating the market size before you started out?
Absolutely, we still do, right? So right now, so obviously you read everything that's out there, right? Everything that is catering to your market. You look at all. So we didn't have a necessary comparable, and that is what caused one of the biggest issues that we had when we were raising, right? So usually when we talk to investors, investors will say, "Do you have a global comparable? And let's see their business model and how are you doing things differently, or are you following the same thing in this market? That's why we have conviction that you will this thing." So StepSetGo didn't have that. So for us, it was reading about what works in the fitness industry and where it's going wrong, right? So it was more of us understanding, oh, this is how things work. This is what a sweaty January thing for gymming is. Whatever the concept might be, it was more about understanding everything we could from the fitness industry to try and poke holes into what we can change. How can we change that, right? Reports, you could read reports of companies that have already raised money, what they have raised money on, what is this thing, how tough are they having to acquire users. You can also read a lot of psychology to understand if that need is there, right? So from a reading perspective, read everything. Right? Now, in case you're coming into new technologies, right? If you suppose you want to go into the Web3 space, this is the easiest time to move into that. I'm just taking an example, right?
Yes.
Easiest time because Web3 is focused on telling you everything about how that economy works. So every Web3 application listing has a white paper that breaks down everything they do. So your idea is completely there for you because they want to make sure you own that property, right? That's what the whole thing is. So right now, if you're in that field, just read all the white papers that are out there. It's just knowledge, it's just business models waiting for you to just read through everything that they've spent 2 years building or just putting together. You can read in the next half an hour. That's immense power you have at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's great insight, and I'm sure that spurned a few more ideas for the people that are tuning in. So thanks for that extra tip. Now let's talk about marketing. StepSetGo has seen a lot of success in not just tier 1 cities, but tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well. And you have advertising experience of about 10 years. So how was your marketing strategy different, or rather, how was your go-to-market strategy different for different locations, specifically the tier 2 and tier 3 cities?
So this answer is going to come off as a little boring because at the end of the day, what we did was we relied on complete and utter viral and user referral growth for StepSetGo to expand to the way it did, right? Or get the kind of traction it the way it did. And essentially, marketing and just marketing in general can be made a lot easier if you're solving a problem, because then people that are using your application become your brand ambassadors, right? And they are the ones that spread the message. And StepSetGo took full advantage of that, right? Because when we made the application, we knew we were solving a problem. We knew that people wanted this solution, even though that solution wasn't there. But whoever we spoke to, there used to be a sense of disbelief first that this is actually happening, and then it used to be like, I'm already doing this. I might as well use StepSetGo while I do this, right? And then the social element came in, and we kept a big focus on social because we knew the growth was going to come from that. So when it comes to the go-to-market strategy, we didn't have a strategy for tier 2 and tier 3. It completely spilled over from the tier 1 cities that we were going and introducing our apps to, right? And these people were championing and becoming our brand ambassadors for the next level, right? Now, when people relatively know about the application and this thing, the cost-effective ways to go about it is to understand which users for us. Because for us, the growth comes from users. And growth coefficient has generally been very high. When I talk about growth coefficient, it means that if I get a user, how likely is he to invite other users to the platform, right? So for us, that has always been high. And what we are trying to do, what we now do, and what luckily because we've had so much organic growth, we can do is understand the psyche of the users that are using the application, who are the ones that invite the most amount of people, categorize them into one compartment and target those kind of users. So just lookalike audiences in different cities and different districts is what we do, and we push this thing to them. Sometimes we even go as far as if you find one or two people that are getting interested, we actually go through the effort. Our product team actually calls them and asks them what is this thing, why are they spreading the application, what do they like about it, and we take insights from that and we put that into the messaging when we're trying to talk to the audiences, right? So that is so obviously because you're targeting more, the cost is higher, but again, if your growth coefficient is high, then it's worth it, right? Essentially.
Right. And did you face any challenges while trying to penetrate the tier 2 and tier 3 cities? And if so, how did you overcome them?
So the challenges that StepSetGo faced is not from a place of identifying users and pushing this app to that user. The challenges came when users tried to understand the application who weren't really, so they downloaded the application. How do the steps turn into coins? How do I earn more coins? How do I earn more coins every day? Like what are the different ways? What are all the features in the application? Because our application suddenly started growing in features as we started expanding, right? So what we had to take a step back is to try, because we were anyway penetrating tier 2 cities. The point was we were seeing uninstalls in tier 2 cities because they weren't understanding the application as well and as fast, right? So we had to actually tone down the user journey for new users and not show our features and basically introduce them to features a little later. So what we started off is we put more, we looked at the onboarding flow in a more nuanced manner, right? We gave them very, very easy tasks to this thing. Now we have things called onboarding tasks. It gives you a lot of coins, but it tells you how each and every function of StepSetGo works. So that also has become gamified for people to earn more coins. They have to go through this, but now you get a full introduction to the application over time, right? So we solved problems that were inside the application for that audience more than trying to figure out how to reach that audience because we already had access to that audience.
Right. Okay. And how should new founders or startups approach the media landscape in these locations to get the most bang for their buck?
So there are a lot of different hacky ways that you can do it. Depends on the industry that you're in, right? Even I have gone and stood with placards in my hometown saying that this is the app that I've started, come download it, right? So there are ways to do it depending on what your budgets are. But the solution that I'm going to talk about, cost, this thing is going to be more on the lines of larger companies, because if you want to look at the media landscape, you're not going to be a startup that's done a seed round and going to tier 2 cities and spending. The best way is to optimize your ads on your programmatic ads and look at your CAC and reduce that as much as possible, right? You're not going to have anything that you need to do from a hacky standpoint in tier 2 and tier 3 cities is going to require feet on ground, which startups can't do. Essentially, unless you have a team that kind of goes there and does rounds and tries to pick up and then puts growth coefficients there, right, where you tell people this thing. PhonePe and this thing have spent a lot of money trying to penetrate those because they have feet on ground. So when it comes to hacky ways, try and figure out how the one user that you got in the tier 2 or tier 3 city becomes that brand ambassador in this thing. Create a incentivized model for them if you have to, where you are constantly rewarding them for introducing your application or your product to more people, right? Find champions in your user base, plant those champions in those cities, and then do whatever you want to keep those champions happy, because that is your growth, right? That is what I would do. That is how I would go about at least trying to penetrate tier 2 cities with limited budgets.
Right. And what about traditional media like out-of-home advertising or print ads, even radio for that matter?
You won't have the money for that if you're a startup.
Okay. So you would not recommend it.
Okay. I would recommend it if you can. See, the problem with non-digital media is that it's hard to tell you exactly what return you got on your spends, right? You could, but historically it's harder than something that you can track from the start to finish, right? Some products just need it, right? But usually, even if I take radio spots in a tier 2 city, it doesn't come cheap. You need to have a marketing budget of over 10 lakhs, right? To even have enough this thing. You're not just going to do it on one day. You're going to take a monthly this thing. You're going to take spots. Those spots have different rates, right? So I wouldn't recommend the conventional channels at all unless you've raised money or you're immensely profitable and you know exactly how much your CAC costs. So then you can always back calculate if you can do it or you can't do it.
Right. Okay. So speaking about money, let's talk about funding as well. StepSetGo has raised 5 crore in seed funding. That's not a small amount by any means. So congratulations on that, first of all. And let's talk about the factors that enabled you to raise that funding.
StepSetGo, in terms of its funding journey, has been a mixed bag, right? So we tend to, when we started, we tend to get a lot of investors excited because of the kind of growth that we were doing. But we also got them uninterested in us fairly fast because our revenue model was based around advertising, right? So by default, so basically how advertising revenue works is that you are getting money mostly from Google or Facebook for advertising. They are anyway taking 40% of your cut or whatever. As 40%, don't quote me on this, but it's not completely clear how much of that is being gone to Google and this thing, because that's not thing, but they take a cut from whatever you're earning. So at the end of the day, if you truly want to scale and become a unicorn, let's say for that matter, right, you can't scale it just on this revenue, right? Because there is a glass ceiling there. And that is where StepSetGo's first kind of hurdle came into the way, because while we have growth, while we had very good stickiness, while we are actually number one in India when it comes to user retention, user growth, user stickiness, when it comes to the fitness category, right? We still were making money through advertising throughout the first 1.5 years. We were a profitable organization at that point of time. We kept the money aside for a rainy day, which we needed, right? And because COVID hit, right?
Right.
So, and our team had grown. So luckily we had made sure that we had some buffer to sustain through that, right? And at that point of time, advertising revenue also dropped. So that was the first first hurdle that we had. So then we had to actually put solutions in place that kind of diversified our revenue streams, right? And once we started doing that, funding became easier, right? So people started connecting with us. People actually were interested in how we are moving across, what the vision is, right? Our vision also went through 2 or 3 iterations, because at the end of the day, you might know what you're doing, but you need to basically your investors need to understand what your vision is, right? And that requires you to go over it once or twice, right? It needs to be articulated in the best possible manner. And none of us come from a finance background. So for us, it was harder to try and convince what we are doing from an Excel file for our users. But again, when you're doing the job day in and day and night, you learn things. So we got used to it over time, and then that was the primary reason. It became easier because we had different channels. Right now we have insurance. Right now we have revenue coming directly from our users. Right now we have corporate tie-ups. Right now we have our own ad engine running where we don't need to rely on Facebook and Google. I can go directly to a PNG and run their campaign, right? So all that is already in place, essentially.
Right. And what advice do you have for founders looking to raise seed funding? What kind of criteria do they need to adhere to?
We've already been over these things, right? So you need to have a solution that the market requires, right? And you need to have enough, you need to have made a case that actually basically translates to your investors, and they see that there is this problem and you actually are the right solution for this, right? Most of the time what happens is you usually have somebody that's made it. So that's where the confidence comes from. And then they look at the founders, what they feel about the founders, because in the beginning, right, when you're raising your first round, you're raising it on the founders, right? While the investors care about what your business plan is and all that, they need to be convinced that the founder can do what he's saying he's going to do, and they will put money on the founder. That is what they're doing. That's why we see people from IITs and IIMs have an easier task to raise funds, because they've already shown that their conviction to have gone through that process when they were younger and stick to things, right? And obviously they are the creme de la creme of the Indian whatever ecosystem.
Yeah.
So obviously make sure that you know what you are make sure you research everything that the investor you're talking to is into, right? Make sure the solution that you're providing is a solution that is necessary. Make sure you're innovating in some degree, and make sure you have a sustainable business model, right?
Okay.
If you check those things, you'll raise money. There's no chance you won't raise money, right?
Right. That's nicely summed up. So let's say that a founder has raised money. Now, after that, what can they do to ensure that they are investing the money in the business in a way that ensures business sustainability and growth?
No investor is going to give you money without you having a plan for that money.
Yeah.
I say this where there are daunting examples of things that are happening when this is not the case. But but if you're not a founder who's had a successful exit and you're the first time founder, they will be very interested in knowing exactly where the funds are going to be used, right? And that is the best place to see if what your plans are resonating with people with experience, right? So you most of the time you'll have VC. If you have if you have a mainstream VC that is investing in you, then they'll go through the due diligence. They will have a vetting system of what you're doing, and then they'll suggest also what needs to be done. And this is our experience and everything, right? But usually when you go pitch to somebody about the concept and why you need the funds, you need to also talk about where those funds are going to be used, right? And even if you don't have systems in place when it comes to MIS reporting and how this thing, there will be a system that will be given to you by the investors, which will take account for how you're spending the money that you've got, right? So usually when you're raising, if you raise the round, you already know how you're spending that money. Obviously things change on a daily level. Obviously you should pivot. Obviously you should read the lean startup if you're basically I'm also quoting books of things that you should read when you are starting up. But so usually if you've closed the round, it's all about sticking to your plans. If they are working, don't get carried away by the fact that you have money. So, okay, I'll experiment a little bit more without having a reason to why I'm experimenting. Don't get blinded by, okay, the confidence is there, I have the money, I can spend it here because I have a gut feeling. Don't lose the sight of how you raise that money, right? And just use it in the best possible manner to make sure you enable whatever your growth, revenue, whatever that is, right?
Right. That's something to keep in mind. When we talk about raising the next round, what are the factors that the founders should consider? Is there a right time or is there a trigger for something like that?
So usually you will raise a round and you will have, when you raise a round, right, you will set goals that I will do this and this with the money that I'm getting in, right? You will have, some investors will give you targets that you'll have to hit. Some investors might not hit the targets, they'll have features that you want to launch, right? Or revenue numbers that you have to hit, whatever the case might be. Usually you'll raise a round to do certain things. If you do those things much faster than you're expected, then you can actually go to the next round of investors and say, look, I raised this money. This is what I was supposed to do. I've used only half of that money, but now I want to scale. Usually how investment rounds work is your seed round usually gives you the capital to put your proof of concept into actually expanding it to a degree where you understand whether the market is ready for your solution or no. And if there is a key driver that you have seen that if you put money in that, it will grow substantially. That is where the Series A comes from, because Series A is usually termed for growth capital, right? Because now you know everything that's working and you're going to use that capital to multiply everything that you have 10 folds, 100 folds, 1,000 folds, depending on if you're Bitcoin or not. But this thing, right? So that's essentially where I'm coming from when it comes to raising the next round, right? It depends on what you raised the last round for. Even if you learn enough and you don't do anything that you did in the last round, but you build the infrastructure, and then obviously you can showcase that all this money is used here. Some of it got wasted because we tried a few things, but this is what we could do. If you've done everything that you're supposed to, that you said you would do after the round, you will be able to raise the next round with a multiplier. There's no doubt about this. There are situations where nothing goes according to plan, right? And then you have to basically either extend your round, do a down round, whatever that might be, right? But at the end of the day, if you hit your things, that's if you hit everything that you want to do, and now you know you need the infusion of funds to grow substantially, that's when. Usually, if you do everything you're supposed to, FOMO gets to the investment community and they'll reach out to you if you're lucky, and then they'll say, tell me more about it. I see you've done this. I see you now you're doing this. Tell me more, right? So usually after you raise the first round, you'll have investors that are in constant touch because it's a small community that people that invest in companies, right? So you will be in the fray and you'll know that you can raise more money. Now it's up to you to decide, is the right time now? or should I have runway for another 24 months? Let me build this feature, so when I launch that, I'll get a better multiplier, so I can raise a bigger round to do more things, right? At the end of the day, you just look at why you are raising the next round.
Sure. Now let's talk about the final question I have, which is about supply chain networks, right? So StepSetGo partners with a wide range of brands, from lifestyle products to food products. Now, what would be your advice to founders who are trying to build a robust supply chain network or a robust partner system?
So I can give a little bit of insights on the partner system, because we work with 400 brand partners to kind of fuel the bazaar that we have, the reward systems that we have for users to exchange their coins in, right? So essentially now so StepSetGo acts as a platform where they get more visibility for them to kind of showcase their product, and that kind of solves the problem of where we are when it comes to the marketplace as of today, right? D2C brands are differentiating in a way where basically now your Garnier, your thing are being substituted by people like Mama Earth and people like that, because they're differentiating in the way that they have placed themselves in the market. It's all about branding. It's all about segmentation and placement of your product, right? So I would say that when you're getting into the space, think of your differentiator, right? At least from if you're coming into that space, think of your differentiator and know that the models that you have thought of where you're going to sell your product and how you're going to sell your product are already saturated, right? Suppose you're an electronics brand that you're planning to launch. If you're trying to use Amazon as your thing, it's going to cost you, because you have to pay to showcase your product in the first world, right? And now you have to find different ways of doing it. So basically have a strategy for how you're going to brand, how you're going to position your market, and then just hit that in a way that you know how you're going to do it, right? The problem right now is people still think of conventional ways. They'll say, oh, I'll do Facebook ads, or I'll do this thing. A lot of people are doing that. Your CAC is going to be higher, right? A lot higher. And then it might not sustain with your LTV, right? Whatever that case might be. So make sure you know what you're doing. And when you come inside this thing, and have things like StepSetGo that are helping you sell more and get you more visibility. And there are a lot of platforms that are doing this. I'm not saying StepSetGo is the only one that's doing it. There are lots of platforms that are doing it. Identify those, right, before you get inside it. And if you can try and put logistics onto somebody else, and now there's so many logistics solutions also, and even if the first investor you talk to will tell you will get killed in logistics, right? Because the Indian logistical scene is a headache. It's all across the world. But the good part is you have people like, I think, Logistics, Ship Rockets, who have, and Delivery, all these some unicorns, some non-unicorns that are helping you out quite a bit. So now your stress is more on branding and differentiation and less on these, because you can just give this away to people that can handle it for you, right? So interestingly, logistics is becoming less and less of a problem thanks to these behemoths that are coming into the market. You still have to do your basics.
With that, we come to an end of this episode of the Wadhwani Viewpoint podcast with Shivjeet Ghatge, the co-founder and CEO of StepSetGo. We've spoken about funding, business models, marketing, and supply chain networks. My name is Manali Shah, and I'll see you in the next one.